There's an old saying, what you see around you isn't always real, and what you cannot see is often right beside you. This saying is deeply connected to the story I'm about to tell you, one that is not just terrifying but also full of unsolved mysteries. The man who experienced it never truly understood what happened to him, but I know the whole story, and if you listen carefully, you might be able to solve this chilling mystery yourself. This story takes place in Kashmir, often called Paradise on Earth. But, if that's true, why has this land witnessed so much violence, bloodshed, and horror? While you may have heard many tales of Kashmir, the one I'm about to tell you is perhaps the most horrifying of all. It's the story of Yusuf, a man who returned to Kashmir after 20 years, only to experience a series of terrifying encounters. This happened in the year 2010. Yusuf, now 40, had been living in New York for 2 decades. He had left India due to his family's severe financial struggles, moving abroad to study and later settling down in the US. Although he had always longed to return home, life circumstances kept him away. One day, however, he received a call that changed everything. His father was gravely ill. Without a second thought, he booked a flight to India. Landing in New Delhi, he immediately arranged for a car to take him to Kashmir. As he neared his hometown, nostalgia took over. The same old shops, the familiar houses, even the shopkeeper's son, now running his father's store, made him feel like time had stood still. But when he arrived at his house, something felt off. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. The neighbors gathered around, watching him strangely. He was, after all, the son who had left years ago and never returned. Just as he was about to leave and return in the evening, the door creaked open on its own. He dismissed it as the wind and entered, calling out for his parents. No response. Then suddenly, a weak voice called from upstairs, his mother's. Rushing to the first floor, he found both his parents looking extremely frail. His mother hugged him tightly, and he was overwhelmed with emotion, relieved to be home, yet filled with guilt for staying away so long. That night, as he went downstairs to get water, he noticed fingerprints on the window. At first he thought it was nothing, but then he realized every window was covered in handprints, as if someone had been standing outside, watching. A chill ran down his spine. He sprinted back upstairs and locked himself in his room. The next morning, he told his mother about it, and she calmly explained, "There's a mentally unstable man in the neighborhood. He lost his wife long ago and has never been the same since. He wanders around at all hours." This explanation put Yusuf at ease. Later that day, his childhood friend Danish invited him to a party. However, his father warned him, no matter what happens, be home before midnight. Strange things happen after that. Yusuf laughed it off, not taking it seriously. At the party, Danish pulled him aside and warned him about Gau Kettle Bridge, a place with a dark history. In 1990, 50 people were massacred there in a single night. Their spirits still haunt the bridge. Yusuf scoffed at the idea of ghosts, but by the time he left the party, it was 3 a.m., and he had to cross that very bridge. As he drove, he suddenly saw a little girl standing at the edge, crying. He hesitated, but couldn't ignore her. Stepping out of the car, he asked her what was wrong. She said, "I can hear my parents calling me, but I can't find them." She pointed towards the pond near the bridge. When Yusuf looked inside, he saw 2 dead bodies floating. His breath caught in his throat. Panicking, he stepped closer to help, but the girl grabbed his hand and whispered something that sent shivers down his spine. "If you save them, what about the others?" He looked again, and to his horror, there weren't just 2 bodies, there were 50. Terror consumed him, and he bolted to his car, speeding away without looking back. As he neared his house, his heart was still pounding. But what he saw next froze him in place. The same strange man from before was standing outside, peering into the windows again. This time, however, Yusuf was determined to confront him. He marched toward the man and shouted, "Why do you keep staring into my house?" The man turned slowly, his eyes dark and hollow. Then, in a calm yet eerie voice, he said something that shattered Yusuf's reality. "Why are you knocking on this door? This house has been abandoned for 20 years. Your parents, they died long ago." Everything around Yusuf blurred. His heart pounded so hard he thought it would burst. He turned back toward the house and saw it for what it truly was. The walls were cracked and covered in vines. The doors were broken. The windows were shattered. It was not a home, it was a ruin. Yusuf's head spun as horrifying memories resurfaced, memories he had buried deep. He had left Kashmir 20 years ago after his parents were brutally killed in the 1990 massacre. The house had been burned down. Yet, he had seen them. He had spoken to them. He had even hugged his mother. A chilling realization settled in. He had been living with ghosts. At that moment, a gust of wind howled through the ruins, and in the distance, he heard his mother's voice one last time. "You finally came home, my son, but you were too late." The next morning, the villagers found Yusuf sitting at the edge of the bridge, shivering, his eyes wide with shock. He never spoke a word again. Some say his mind never recovered. Some say his soul never truly left that house. And some say that on dark nights, if you stand near Gao Kedal Bridge, you can still hear a faint whisper. His mother calling his name.